The stage was set. Lights blazed overhead and the cameras rolled for what was supposed to be another high-profile interview with Elon Musk, visionary, inventor, and enigma. The moderator introduced the segment, an open forum with the brightest minds and boldest questions. What they didn't know was that tonight's show would spark something much deeper than just innovation or intellect. It would challenge the very meaning of existence. Elon, dressed simply, leaned into the microphone with his usual calm demeanor. His answers flowed, touching on AI, Mars, and the simulation theory. The audience hung on every word. But then came a hand, raised not out of curiosity, but out of defiance. It was a young man in his early 20s, confident, sharply spoken, a self-proclaimed atheist. "Mr. Musk," he began, his voice firm, "you often speak of colonizing Mars, of engineering the future. But isn't all this just distraction, a way to avoid the truth? That life is random, meaningless. There is no God, no purpose, just entropy and decay, and we're just pretending otherwise." The room fell silent. The cameras zoomed in. Elon didn't blink, but instead of replying right away, he paused, then asked, "Is that what you believe? That nothing matters?" The boy smirked. "It's not about belief. It's about facts. The universe doesn't care. Stars die. Planets crumble. We're just atoms in motion." Elon folded his hands. "Then why ask me? Why speak with passion? Why raise your voice in a room full of strangers, if none of this matters?" The atheist didn't respond immediately, and that pause, just a moment, was the beginning of something no one expected. Elon continued, "We build rockets, yes, but not because Mars gives us meaning. We build because something in us reaches, a yearning. That's not science, that's soul. If everything were just atoms, why would we feel awe when we look at the stars? Why would we cry at beauty, or feel injustice when someone is hurt?" The boy's face tensed. "Emotions are chemicals, nothing more." A murmur ran through the crowd. Was he right? Is that all we are? Chemicals and neurons? Then, from the back of the audience, a soft voice spoke. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to draw attention. A young girl in a hijab stood, hesitant but calm. "May I say something?" she asked the moderator. He nodded, curious. She walked forward. "You say emotions are chemicals, but when my father died," her voice caught slightly, "I felt something I couldn't explain. Pain, yes, but also something sacred, something that whispered to me that death isn't the end." She turned to the atheist. "Have you never felt that? That quiet sense that someone is watching, even in the silence?" The boy didn't answer. "Not yet." She continued, "The Quran says, and we have certainly created man and know what his soul whispers to him, and we are closer to him than his jugular vein." Her tone was gentle, not preachy, just a girl sharing her heart. The audience leaned in, and Elon Musk listened, quietly. The silence in the room wasn't awkward, it was reflective. Like everyone for a moment stepped outside themselves. Even the atheist boy's eyes flickered, as if that verse softly spoken brushed against something he'd buried deep. He shifted in his seat. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said, "but grief doesn't prove God, it just proves pain." The girl nodded. "Yes, but where does that pain point us? Isn't it strange that in our worst moments we instinctively look up? We reach for something higher, not out of habit, but out of hope." She turned toward Elon. "You've seen the edge of technology, Mr. Musk. You've looked further than most of us ever will. Do you ever feel that what we're chasing isn't just science, but something divine in disguise?" Elon took a breath. "I often think about consciousness. We still don't understand it. It's the one thing we use to explore the universe, yet it remains the greatest mystery." He looked at the atheist. "You talk about facts, and I respect that. But facts can't explain why we love, why we dream, or why, when you spoke just now, people listened." The boy frowned. "Because I challenged you." "No," Elon said softly, "because you were searching, and searchers are close to the truth." A hum of agreement moved through the audience. The Muslim girl stepped closer, her voice calm but certain. "I'm not here to convince you of a religion, but I do believe in God, not as a rule book, not as fear, but as mercy, as meaning, as the one who hears us when no one else does." Then she looked at the boy and asked something simple, but shattering. "If there's no God, why do you want there to be?" He blinked. "I don't." She tilted her head. "Then why do you sound so angry about it? If God doesn't exist, why does he bother you so much?" The audience stirred again. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to reach. Elon leaned forward slightly intrigued. The boy exhaled, suddenly quieter. "Because if God existed, then maybe all of this, everything I've lost, would have a reason. Maybe I wouldn't feel like I'm just drifting in space." "And there it is," Elon said gently. "The real question, not is God real, but does my life matter?" and then he turned to the girl. Do you believe it does? She nodded without hesitation. Yes, because God isn't distant. He's near, even when we're broken, especially then. She looked around the room. Isn't it strange that we've all felt it, at night when no one's around, when the world is silent, that quiet voice inside asking, why am I here? That's not biology, that's soul. Elon looked out over the crowd, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Maybe, he said, the greatest technology isn't what we build, but what's already been built inside us. The boy sat back, his arms crossed, but his expression had changed, less defiance, more confusion, or maybe curiosity. The boy looked down at his hands, silent now. For the first time, he wasn't sure what to say. Something was happening, not just around him, but within him. Like the certainty he carried had sprung a crack, not because someone argued better, but because someone cared enough to ask a deeper question. The moderator cleared his throat gently. Would you like to respond? The boy hesitated. I didn't come here to talk about faith. I came to challenge Elon Musk, but now I'm being asked about my soul. Elon leaned back in his chair, a slight smile forming. Sometimes the real questions come when we least expect them. I've spent my life solving problems, how to land rockets, how to rewire energy, how to build cars that drive themselves. But the hardest question I still face is, what am I really building all this for? He paused, scanning the audience. What's the point of progress if we lose ourselves along the way? The girl looked at Elon, then at the boy. My father used to say, your soul is like a compass. It always points toward meaning, even if you try to ignore it. The boy replied, but how do I know it's not just wishful thinking? What if religion is just a crutch, something people use because they're scared to face the truth? The girl's eyes didn't waver. Maybe some people do use it that way, but the truth doesn't disappear just because people misuse it. Fire can warm a house or burn it down. That doesn't mean fire is evil. It means we have to understand it. Elon nodded. We've misunderstood a lot in history. We once thought the earth was flat. We once thought machines couldn't think. Maybe we also misunderstand God, not because he's hidden, but because we're noisy. The boy glanced up. Noisy? Elon continued. Our minds are loud, full of noise, distractions, doubts, trauma, but in silence, you hear things, ideas, questions, whispers, maybe even answers. There was a moment of stillness, like everyone in the room was thinking the same thing, but no one wanted to say it aloud. The girl finally broke it. I'm not perfect, I have questions too, but when I pray, when I put my head on the ground and whisper to the one who made me, I feel peace, not logic, not science, but something deeper. She looked at the boy. Have you ever tried it? Not for show, just to ask quietly in the dark, are you there? Not expecting thunder or miracles, just asking. The boy didn't answer, but his eyes were wet now. Elon, watching, said, sometimes the most brilliant minds are not the ones who know the answers, but the ones who dare to ask better questions. The girl smiled softly. And the best question is the one that leads us home. The camera zoomed out slightly, capturing the moment. Two worlds, science and faith, had collided, but instead of shattering, something new was forming. A bridge. The audience was no longer just spectators, they were witnesses to something real, something human. A boy who came to challenge was now being challenged, not by force but by feeling, not by argument but by honesty. The boy finally spoke, voice lower, almost uncertain. I've asked before, in the dark, late nights, after things got too heavy. He looked at the girl, but I never got an answer. She replied gently, sometimes silence is the answer, not a denial but an invitation. To keep asking, to keep searching. Maybe the answer isn't always what we want. Maybe it's what we need. Elon leaned forward again, thoughtfully. You know, people ask me if AI will one day replace human beings. I tell them, maybe it'll replace tasks but not meaning. Meaning is uniquely human. We long, we grieve, we love. These things, they're not code. He looked at the boy again. You said life is meaningless, but still, you came here. You raised your voice. You cared enough to speak. Somewhere in you, you still hope for something more. The boy blinked. I don't know anymore. And there it was. That was the turning point. Not a confession of belief, but of uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, there was humility. A door creaked open. The girl took a small step closer. You don't have to know everything. None of us do. God doesn't ask for perfect belief, just sincerity, just honesty. Even doubt can be part of the journey if you bring it to him. She paused. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, once said, God is more merciful to his servants than a mother to her child. That means even when we're lost, even when we deny him, he still sees us, he still waits. Elon's eyes glimmered with thought. I once said that I want to die on Mars, just not on impact. But lately I've been thinking, death isn't just a destination. It's a mirror. It makes us ask who we are and what we've done with the time we had. The room felt heavier now, not from sadness, but from weight. The kind of weight that makes you sit up straighter, breathe slower, and listen deeper. The moderator finally asked, "So, what do we make of this moment? What's the takeaway?" Elon looked at the crowd. Maybe the takeaway is that science answers how, but faith answers why. Maybe we need both. The girl added softly, and maybe God doesn't need us to understand everything, just to ask. She turned to the boy, not pushing, not preaching, just present. "If you're still searching," she said, "then you're closer than you think." The boy swallowed hard. "What if I want to believe? But I'm scared." She nodded. "Then whisper, even if you don't believe he hears. Whisper anyway. That's how faith starts, not with noise, but with a whisper in the dark." And in that moment, he did. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in front of the world, he didn't speak to Elon. He didn't speak to the girl. He whispered to God. The whisper was silent to everyone else, but to him, it thundered through the chambers of his soul. No one knew the words he spoke. Not even he did. It wasn't eloquent. It wasn't polished, but it was real. The girl didn't press him. She just stood there, her presence steady like a candle in the wind. And Elon, he looked away for a moment like he was giving the boy the dignity of privacy, even in a room full of eyes. Then the boy opened his eyes again, not with sudden enlightenment, but with something gentler, softer, like a burden had shifted slightly, not gone but no longer unbearable. "I don't know if he heard me," he said quietly. The girl responded, "He did." The moderator stepped forward slowly, unsure how to even summarize what had just happened. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we were supposed to have a debate tonight, but I think we got something much more valuable." Elon nodded. "A conversation." The boy looked at Elon. "I thought you were just a scientist, just a builder of machines, but tonight you spoke more like—" He paused, searching for the word. Elon smiled faintly. "Like a man who's still searching too?" The boy nodded, and then Elon looked back at the audience, his voice taking on a reflective tone. "We live in an age where data drives decisions, where proof is demanded before anything is believed. But sometimes, the most powerful things are the ones we feel, not measure." He glanced at the girl. "Like what you said, about that sacred moment after your father died, that wasn't science, that was something eternal." She nodded. "And it didn't make me weaker, it made me stronger, because I realized I wasn't alone." Elon continued, "I used to think that religion and science were at odds, but now I wonder, maybe they're just two languages trying to describe the same mystery. One uses equations, the other uses prayers." The boy exhaled deeply, as if years of skepticism had been hiding a quieter cry for hope. "What if I can never believe like you do?" he asked the girl. "You don't have to," she replied gently. "Faith is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming honest with yourself. The questions that keep you up at night, they matter, and God is not afraid of them." She paused. "He made you a thinker. He knows your heart." A hush fell again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was warm, like the room itself had softened. Elon looked out once more and said, "Maybe tonight we didn't answer every question, but maybe we asked the ones that matter most." The camera panned slowly across the audience, eyes filled with thought, hearts stirred. No one would leave the same. And deep inside one boy who had come to dismantle belief, something unfamiliar had begun to grow. Not certainty, but faith's first seed, the willingness to hope. The program was drawing to a close, but no one moved. There was a sacred stillness in the room, as if everyone was holding their breath, not out of suspense, but reverence. The moderator gave a small smile. "This wasn't the show we planned, but maybe it was the one we needed." Elon nodded. "We chase stars, colonize planets, and build machines that talk like humans, but we still haven't mastered the art of healing what's inside us." He looked down for a moment, then added, "You know, I used to believe that humanity's survival depended only on science, but tonight reminded me, without soul, science is empty." The girl turned to the boy, who still seemed to be processing everything. "I'm not here to convert you," she said. "That's not my job, only God can turn hearts. But I'll leave you with this. If you ever feel alone again, just speak to him, even if you're unsure, even if you're broken." The boy looked at her, and for the first time there was no resistance in his face, only vulnerability. "What if I don't know how?" She smiled. "You already do. Just speak like you did tonight, honest, raw, that's all prayer is." Elon added, "Belief doesn't always come with lightning and voices from the sky. Sometimes it comes like a quiet realization, that maybe, just maybe, you're not walking alone. Then he turned to the audience. We started this night with a question. Maybe it's time we leave with a better one. He paused. Not does God exist, but have you truly asked him yourself? There was a subtle shift. Some people glanced at each other, others lowered their heads. The question wasn't rhetorical, it was personal. The girl stepped back, her words now directed to everyone watching, both in the studio and across the world. We live in a world full of voices, social media, politics, noise. But the voice that changes you is the one you listen to when the world is silent. The one that says, you are loved, you are seen, you are made for more. That's not weakness, that's faith. She paused and added, the teachings of Jesus spoke of love, mercy, humility, not division, not superiority. Every prophet came to call hearts back to goodness, and when we return to that truth, we return to ourselves. The boy looked at Elon. I came here to win an argument, but I think I just found something worth more than winning. Elon smiled. Then maybe tonight you really did win. As the lights dimmed, the cameras slowly pulled back. The set faded into a gentle hum of applause, not thunderous but tender. The boy sat quietly, his heart no longer full of fire, but of flickering light. And somewhere in that flicker, a new journey had begun. Not a journey of certainty, but of courage, of whispering in the dark, and waiting quietly for the light to answer.